so that's good.
Should be in a couple of seconds.
All right.
Alright, seems like it's live. Yeah, YouTube is a little bit weird.
Yeah, and you're it'll be on the Woody channel, right?
Yes. Should be live on Woody's channel right now.
I'm not seeing it yet.
Let me just check. Anyone? Yep. Did I? Oh, wait. It's set as unlisted. Let me put it public.
Oh yeah, that would help.
What about now?
Ah, there we go. I see it.
Alright. Good. There should be a delay, a small delay, but let me know if you can hear me on YouTube. Sorry for the noise. In order for you to hear, I need to talk, right? So. Can anyone hear me? Respond on YouTube chat if you do. All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Is it better now? The volume?
I'll let you know in just a minute.
Someone just replied on YouTube. That was okay. A little bit quiet. So I amped the volume a little bit.
Yep, I believe we're good.
Good. Perfect. So let's just give it a few minutes for the other guys to join. We'll be started in 8 minutes.
some people starting to log in here now. Good to see. Love to see it. Be starting up here in about 5-6 minutes.
Yep. Every week the numbers are getting bigger, which is good.
Oh, I see we got Cub Scouted going on, show.
Hey man, nothing. Just finally logging in and doing my daily.
The grind. I love it.
You guys have topics for today? Or no?
Yes, there are a few topics. We're going to be able to get them added into chat. I know Big Bird was doing some thinking on that.
Oh, okay, cool. Hey everyone, thanks for coming. We're still waiting for a couple more folks. We're hoping to start promptly at 9. Well, Brooke, are you off your flight yet? Or are you going to be muted for the first bit?
I'm in a car right now, but I can try to talk, but I'll probably be muted for 10 minutes.
Are you driving or being driven?
I'm being driven.
Uber or private car?
Private car.
This is the way. Hokage, am I saying that right? Hokage?
Yep. Hokage.
Sweet. Hokage. Better?
Yep. It's good.
Sweet.
It's a Japanese word, so I don't expect anyone to pronounce it correctly.
Names and their pronunciation are important.
Yes.
Definitely better than being called the Hokage.
It wouldn't be the first time. So it's all
I
good.
don't doubt it.
Alright, well, I sent LG an image of Samuel L. Jackson saying TikTok motherfucker, so we'll start in a minute or so. Do I have to say anything special to you, Hokage, to start the recording?
Nope. All good.
Alright, this dude's got 60 seconds. Give me 1 second to add him again.
See? It's not the first time.
Alright, Hokage, let's start the recording and let me know when we're ready.
We're ready?
Alright everyone, welcome back to Monsters with Monsters. A couple weeks in, glad to have you join us. Shout out to Woody for hosting us on his Discord channel and for Hokage for recording. It'll be up in a couple days on YouTube. And Woody had a live on YouTube earlier this week talking about mergers, so everyone should check that out. We got a couple topics to talk about today. I'm just going to go down your list, Holbrook. You know, one of the first things we're talking about is for high spenders, you know, what people are doing for C44 prep. LG, do you want to start us off?
Hey guys, happy Sunday or whatever day it is for you. It's been a long one for me. But yeah, I mean, I think Holbrook and I were kind of tossing it back and forth the other day. And, I mean, outside of, you know, going I kind of brought it up last week, I don't think there's going to be a whole bunch of us, but let's say there are people just sacking away uranium. I know, like me and Mental and Ronaldo, and there's probably a good handful of other people out there that are stacking up the green shit. Obviously, that's going to be needed in preparation for C44 or 42, 43, whatever it is that you're going to be shooting for here in the very near future. But for me personally right now, I mean, I believe I'm pretty much there uranium-wise, you know, at least to be able to open up the, you know, the newest troop tier in a garage for myself. And, you know, my buddies over there in Enoch server have done the nerdy math and essentially given us a number, which I believe to be about 7 million green shit. You know, I'm a long-range player, so I think that you know, obviously means a lot. If Tip's in the chat, he can probably give you a different number for the mid-range guys. But for a long-range guy, I'm hearing about 7 million green shit. And that's to open, you know, essentially all your different, you know, troop tiers that you're going to have there, as well as the garage, from my understanding. I haven't personally done the math, so please don't quote me on that. But it could be upwards of like 8 or 9 to like max all buildings. I'm thinking about 9 million green shit, billion green shit, whatever the hell it is, for you know, the max buildings. But you know, for me personally, outside of the green stuff, because I do have it, you know, really all I've been doing is switching my, you know, my recruitment, you know, I guess strategy, you know, and typically I recruit enough, you know, whatever troops on a daily basis to, you know, do my dailies, you know, quote unquote. So now I'm kind of, you know, and for me, I'm really fat, right? I'm 700 and 30 some odd million DP or whatever the case is. So I don't have a lot of room for recruiting new troops when new troop tiers come out, outside of, deleting T11 I might have and T12 type deal. So I've kind of pivoted myself to no longer recruit T13, tanks and cannons and things like that, and kind of position myself to, recruit T12s like shredders and UMPs and things of that nature. So for me personally, again, I'm fat, I'll just promote them as opposed to recruit them. So I'll get a handful of fleets really, really quickly, and probably for a lot less money, and kind of just go from there, But I really don't know much else, you can really do in preparation of. There's only so much money you can spend on the game. There's only so many people that are in a position to just, whatever, have things in the bag like that. But, if you are going to be getting some T14 or any new troop tier for that matter, it doesn't just have to be for, C44 coming out. A lot of you guys like to hide troops. A lot of you guys like to, do all of those things. And if you're just socking away the T10, when you go to T11, and you don't backtrack to kind of promote that T10, and that T10 is probably just going to, end up hurting your nation one day. So, there's a lot of different ways to prep. But for me personally, the buildings, I'm a max city, so all my buildings are already maxed. I'm just waiting for the, the notification, if you will. And again, my recruiting right now is basically T12. So I'm recruiting shredders and I'm recruiting EMPs and armored soldiers and things like that. So when it does get released, I'll just promote, and I won't have to wait for like a recruit event or something along those lines to get a new troop type. I'll immediately pop out with a couple of new fleets of T4. That's really all I'm doing in preparation for the C44 stuff. I'm just biding my time and waiting for whenever Camel's gonna kind of unleash that little bone for us. What about you, Holden?
Yeah.
You doing anything different?
I'm doing about the same. Just shredders. Definitely nothing with the camp. Snipers are kind of trash. So the only thing I would really say different from what you said, I think we're all guessing on what the totals are going to be. I was reading 5.5 might be on the low end. So I'm kind of with you. It could be 9, it could be 7, it could be 5.5. Nobody really knows. So I guess everybody's just buying the first 3 packs or 4 packs if they're trying to run that way.
Yeah, I'm personally still buying the first 3 packs. I have about 6.5, million or whatever green shit currently, 6.6, something along those lines. So yeah, I'm doing just that. I'm buying the first 3 or 4 packs with the weekly, the monthly, the daily, whatever kind of, Camel gives us access to. And I think I'll be able to get there, fairly quickly and make a judgment on, rushing to max out the buildings after that or not. It's really
It seems like snipers is the real wild card. Like none of us expect snipers to be good, but if they are actually good, then all of a sudden you have to factor in the camp upgrades.
I'm gonna do a camp upgrade anyway, just because I feel like once I have EMPs, I might toss some, some filler in there somewhere. I don't know. It really depends on placement and things like that, but I've never used a sniper in any of my fleets. I did for position against a couple of different guys, I believe once or twice, like some mid-range guys. But I don't know. I never was successful with snipers in any capacity. I was kind of talking shit about this on one of our Discord servers earlier. I just don't like them. I've personally never been successful with them. I've never been beat by them. And the last person that told me that they were good was Raz, and we'll leave it at that. And
I think that you always try to help everybody out, and I think the important takeaway is cannons are great, and upgrading your factory is great. Getting the shredders is great. The EMPs is kind of secondary to getting the shredders, and then snipers is our guess at what will be the last thing you want to upgrade for anyone that doesn't have enough.
Yeah, and let me add a couple things for folks who are in a different bracket than you guys, but still a bracket above a lot of other folks. You know, I don't remember if we've talked about it here, but I would save your uranium permits. When C41 came out, Camel increased the amount of uranium that you got from those. And Camel is not really good about honoring, like if you use something up right before a change, they're not going to retroactively give you the new rate. So I would save your, you know, whatever those are called that you get from the dailies. They're like you can get 1,000 from them right now, or maybe it's 800. I don't remember, but I would save those. And maybe they don't increase the amount of uranium you get from them, but maybe they do. So there's a way to get some more uranium there. In preparation for T14 zombies, I'm building up, killing some troops every single day to build up my zombie. I call it zombie juice. I don't actually know what the game calls it, because I'm maxed out at the number of zombies I have. So I'm going to be only upgrading. I'm not going to be trying to recruit a ton of T14 zombies, but I do want to have some zombie juice in the bank in preparation. And if you do it a little bit every day, there's a daily maximum. And so I, try and just fall in just under that every day. For me,
Yeah, that's what those snipers are for, ladies and gentlemen.
That's what
Did you say
Send them to your nearest alternative city.
Did you say what your total is, Fred?
LG. What's that?
Did you say what your total is? Like, how much are you trying to save up?
No, because I thought about it late, so I've just been doing it for a little while every day. I don't have a total in mind, but
Do we
I
know?
also-
Do we know about what it costs per batch? Somebody smart in the chat might want to give us that, just so we can have a, like what's it going to cost us, to upgrade and have, say 60,000 T14 zombies like day one. So I would like to know that, because if I gotta buy some, I'll buy some and just keep it in the bag. Because I didn't even necessarily think about that until you just brought it up. But thank you.
Yeah, and on the recruiting piece, I'm with ULG. If you've got enough T13, I think it's a good time to start shifting more towards T12. Quick plug for Iniox, he has the AOL stat calculator. I think he just added a recruiting tab that'll show you how many points you get for recruiting different levels. I did not look at it closely, but it's possible there's some points lost in KE if you're recruiting T12. So, something to think about. I'm not really worried about that per se, but something for others to think about. In terms of your current buildings, like for me, once I felt like C44 was a possibility, I just stopped upgrading my buildings. I have everything that I need at C41, and I'm just not sure what they're going to path as the requirements for C44. So I didn't want to spend uranium in the wrong direction, so to speak. And as people are, coming up through the city levels, and if you're not at 41 yet, I think about, what kind of troops you want to have access to in 6 months or 12 months, because I think wasn't really an option for some of us when we were coming up, because C38 was the highest out there, so T12 EMPs were kind of the gold standard long-range attack troop. But, as C41 came out, T13 cannons became available at C40, and as C44 comes out, the path is longer on city levels. So I would just advise folks to think deliberately about what kind of troops you want to have as your primary frontline and primary attack troops, and kind of build towards that. And that may mean, skipping over some troop types at their normal new tier, and skipping past some T12 workshop troops, for example, and going to T13 factory.
I mean, there's an argument to be had almost at every like major new troop type level. It's like,
Yeah,
you know,
I agree with
does
that.
does the C-38 skip EMPs and go to C-13 cannons, right? Like, you know, should that, you know, there's an argument really at every level from C-37 all the way up, you know, for the most part. You know, so it's really dependent, and that's really, you know, in my opinion, you know, I continue to pounce and pray and whatever, push leadership, you know, and hope that you're you know, behind a team that knows what the hell they're talking about, because, you know, it should be a couple of questions away, you know, and without egos involved, or if you're, you know, if you don't like doing any alliance chat, because sometimes those conversations involve money or talking about money or spend and things like that. So maybe you do it in, you know, private message more so than alliance chat with some specific people, but, you know, you should be able to have a nice, you know, I don't want to say man to man because there's a lot of women's, you know, in alliances, but you guys know what I'm saying. You should be able to have a nice conversation and, you know, on an individual basis with the collective nature of the alliance / nation or whatever your guys' goals are in mind, you know, and give you guys proper direction probably for the next 6 months to a year of where you should be pointing your city. And any time in the next 6 months to a year that you have a question during said, you know, build, you know, all you gotta do is ask, you know, and if you're around the right people and you have good leadership and, you know, people that are like listening to this podcast or just great leaders that understand the game or have played in a different nation, you know, whatever the case might be, you should be able to have that, you know, one-to-one, you know, conversation and make a, you know, a legitimate plan. You know, I know we spoke last week a lot about like that whole C-37 and mid-range change and blah 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 blah. You know, and I'll tell you, you know, my update on that is, you know, I think for the 425 and like the 621s of the world, I think we're a little too far past that to be able to, you know, have our free players, you know, make that switch. Just because I think they're, you know, too far deep. You know, their 6 stars are open. Some of this and that has happened and taken place, but, you know, properly planned, I do believe that my C-38s will skip EMPs and go to T-13 cannons. I do believe that over the course of 12 to 18 months, the medium spender, the guy that spends a little bit of money here and there, you know, above and beyond the consumables per se, I believe in, say, 12 to 18 months, those individuals will organically be able to save said items and make that switch eventually at one time. But it's probably a good 12 months from now before that happens, or more for some people, depending on their activity. That argument, Big Bird, can be made almost at every level. You know, and I do believe with the C-44 coming out,
That's all.
you should be able to skip EMPs, you know, if I were you, just because of the workshop. You know, I think, you know, if you were to ask me and I were your leader, I would say, you know, rock out with your cock out with your T-12, you know, shreds and your T-11 cannons and just chill, you know, until you get T-13, you know, even if that's a year from now or 18 months from now. I believe that to be a, you know, a better opportunity, you know, because it'll take them 9 months to get EMPs, and then it'll push off T-13 cannons probably another, you know, whatever, year and a half, depending on spend. So these are all arguments again, but I think that the easiest way is it's an individual basis. And if you are, you know, one of those nations that likes to compete at a high level, whether it be elite war or otherwise, you should be able to have good leadership in place and ask the right questions at the right time and get the answer that you're looking for. And if you're not, you really should suggest, you know, moving nations. That's just my professional opinion. Yeah.
I think we all know that formation is super important, and so having troop types is valuable for having formation, right? You can't really have the formation without the troop types, but at the same time you have to balance it for sure with the spend. So there are people in 785 that I have definitely said, you want to stay long range, no problem, you should only do factory, like one factory. You can recruit T7 in the other factory, and just take one factory up, get your cannons, get your shredders, and that's just an efficient way to get a reasonable build. You sacrifice some formation, but having those C-37 shredders are obviously valuable. So I agree with you. Like what you're saying, it depends on the spend, and you have to make efficient upgrades. And if you're long range and you're upgrading 2 camps to whatever your city level is, you're probably making terrible choices, and you should talk to someone right away. LG, I would say there are some there are some Chinese nations that actually went full mid that are around the 700s, and I can't say that I think they're amazing. So somebody who's really looking into trying to convince their nation to go full mid might want to figure out why those nations that have done it have not succeeded. That's the only thing that I would argue against the full mid.
I mean, I
approach.
looked at some great battles that I've had recently with nations like 567 and 621. I just had a couple of great frenzies with these guys who come big and strong, and it was nice to see the balance of power. It's just to
No,
see
no, I'm
that,
not.
you know.
I'm not talking
John-
about. I'm not talking about the big guys. I mean, honestly, I think the second biggest guy in 785 is mid. So I would be a hypocrite to say anything else. I'm talking about like your middle spend to your lower spend people. I don't know enough to say this with confidence, but I feel like the JXY alliance that's around the 700s is a real heavy mid nation. And when we were growing up, I really felt like, oh, that's impressive that they committed to this early. And I can't say I see them winning a lot of stuff. So
I mean, it's one of those things where, in my opinion, just what I've seen over the last handful of years playing this thing, it's super rare to see, number one. And it would only be a Chinese nation for whatever reason. Typically because there's one big whale in there, he's a mid-ranger, they picked that way for, I really don't have the answer as to why. But the monsters in every, that I've seen anyway, and down close to me, I don't know about the 700 nation, but like, I don't know, fucking 555, 528, all those guys, they got big, powerful mid-range guys. And so I feel like they just followed suit, but hey, I don't know. But, all those Chinese nations, they never really win much. Like those, like, events that, I'd like to think that we prioritize. They like their, they're really great at focusing, just leave it at that.
yeah, don't get me wrong. I actually want to see what you're looking for. I want to see this nation that just commits early and is just crushing everyone, because it would bring a fun twist to the game. I'm only saying I haven't seen it.
I feel like it's unfortunate that you're probably not going to see that, man. Just because of how much is available to upgrade right now. What's the probability of a nation being popped open right now with more than one whale in it? And I feel like it's very unlikely. You're not going to get a 621/425, 255. You're not going to get these ridiculous nations out of, some organically built nation, in my opinion. It's just not going to happen. That's why you see your Chinese nations getting their 6, 7, 9, 10, 12 mergers, to have all those powerful cities together. So the probability of what you and I would want to see, Holbrook, happening in a new nation for everybody to commit is just like not going to let's just leave it at that. In my opinion, they're one of those things where it's like you have to take everybody who's played this game, and they would all have to go to the nation and kind of focus on it. I think it would be super difficult. But it would be great to see. I think we're better off trying to build it ourselves, whether it takes some time or not. I think it's definitely, better to try to do it homegrown and organically. But sometimes it just doesn't happen, We've had to recruit 425, and most of the bigger nations out there have had to recruit, to keep, the blood flowing and all of the above. So, I think it's just part of the game at this juncture. I really do. And I feel bad for the new guys, man. I can't say it enough, dude. I feel bad for the new guys, bro. I do, bro. The only way I continue to stay with the game is because I'm already maxed, bro. If I started this shit today, and I'm not a fucking idiot, and I'm not calling everybody in the 1200s plus a fucking idiot, but it's hard, man, to look at all of those available upgrades, all of those officers, all of those dragons and fucking planes and all that stuff, and it's hard, you know. So fucking more power to you guys who are doing it, man. I wouldn't do it. I'd quit for sure, you know. And that's, you know, that's just me, because I was here before all that shit. And when the new thing came out, I was already, you know, it's like the only thing I had to buy. So it was like different for me, you know. I really do. I feel bad for the fucking new guys, you know. And if you don't have great leaders, man, just hit one of our group chats, man. We'll point you in the right direction. I don't even care if you come to my nation, you know. Just go to a nation that's worth the fun, you know, because it'll keep us fucking having fun, you know. And because yeah, that's I feel bad, you know. I wouldn't be able to do that. It's a lot.
I think there's a pattern. I want to shut up so Bird can talk, but I'll just real
No
quick.
worries.
I'll just say real quick. I think there's a pattern in the younger nations where a whale comes in and builds 1 to 3 to 4 cities, and then when they can't carry the whole nation, they kind of peace out, and then somebody else comes in and grabs that. And if you get somebody great that grabs that city, then the nation can end up great. But it's definitely just a lottery. Anyone can buy that city, right? Sorry, not buy that city. Yeah, we can say that here, right?
Obtain
then-
that city.
Yeah, sure. Transfer that city for some smiles. But there's another problem too with these younger nations that I'm seeing now, which is these farm bots take up so many cities that you don't have enough real players, and nobody really thinks about the long-term impact of now you don't have enough real players to have enough real leaders. So even if you end up with a great whale and a great top alliance, your second and third alliances have no leadership because it's just bot farms or resource sellers or whatever that are influencing the entire nation via the second and third alliance. So it's tough, man. I mean, I think on one hand, when you start in a new nation and you have a crew, you want to stay there. Like, those are your people. This is a social game. And now with alliance events, you can convince yourself to just stick around and nation events don't matter. And I wouldn't judge anyone that did that. But I'm just looking at the composition of these new nations and thinking, there's just resource sellers and bot farms for the second and third alliance, and like, you need to wait 2 to 3 merges just to get anything reasonable. You gotta really fucking love that alliance, man.
Especially if you're spending money, you know, like if you're just doing it to be social and stuff like that, like you just mentioned, like more power to you. You know, I know plenty of those people. I love them myself, and I think we all do, right? The social aspects of the game is probably 65% of why I played, and the relationships that I've built over the years. So like I get all of those things, but man, like, you know, a relationship isn't necessarily built in like 4 months, right? That it's a forever thing, you know. And if that one whale, like you described, figures out that he can't just carry it, because I've been in that position to a certain degree before, and it's not a great place, you know. It's just not. It's not fun. It's difficult, you know. And I can see why these, you know, whatever, these whales just pack up shop and just, you know, go on to the next thing. And you know, it sucks to see, because if they were to have not spent, you know, $500,000 in some shit nation, and they were to, you know, whatever, go pick up a fucking C-34 in whatever 255, like, even if they spent all that money to build it up to a C-41, they'll at least be happy, you know, with the nation that they're in, the winning, the camaraderie, the, you know, everybody with a very similar mindset. You know, that's what I like, is the similar mindsets, you know, like everybody hyped, you know, like this morning, you know, like we had Elite War this morning against Nation 52. You know, we've been talking for several weeks now as an alliance, and, you know, and it was great. You know, we showed up heavy, we were able to burn the base, and, you know, that the alliance chat afterwards was popping for hours. In my opinion, that's what it's about, you know. I was busy today. I went to the Monster Jam thing with my kids, and I checked into the Alliance chat a couple of hours later. Man, they're still talking about, you know, the video and how this person did this trap and whatever, you know, it's cool. You know, so I love those things. I just don't think that I would love those things if I was losing. I don't think I would love those things if I was spending an F ton of money and not really getting anywhere. So it's tough. It's tough, and it's all like nation based, alliance based, and what people are trying to do. I think it's very difficult for guys like us to come on a podcast like this and just give general information, because some people can take that shit and run with it and not really know what the hell that they're interpreting to whoever is the next guy or even themselves. So I like that that people should be smart, and they should kind of hang out, and I don't know, they should look for information well before you know I just feel like there's a big time frame of which you're playing the game, become whatever, like you said, almost indebted to the family and the relationships, and then you figure out that your nation sucks. You know, sometimes it takes a little while to figure it out because void wars are opening late. And there's a million different reasons. So people should just talk, man. You got to find the podcast. You got to find the information. You got to find whatever it is to make an informed judgment. Because again, man, starting a nation in 1400 right now, man, I make a lot of money. I do. But to start a new city, to have what I have in nation 1400 in 6 months from now, is like crazy. I spent that money over like 5 or 6 years. I would have to spend that money in like 6 months. And so it's tough to wrap your mind around. It really is. So I think for guys that do have good nations, say nation 1,000 and under, because those are probably pretty decently put together nations by now, or at least have figured it out one way or the other. All the good nations from nation 1,000 and down should just have a stack of C-35s or C-30, whatever, is kind of your base model, in your nation. Like for me, it would be 636s probably. Everyone's a little bit different depending on your age. Just have a stack of them sitting in the corner, and just talk about it. And people should ask for those cities and just give them to them. Don't ask for money. Don't try to sell them. Don't do any of that shit. Just give them to them. If the long as they're active and this, that, and the third. You might get burned on them a couple of times too. Well, it's part of the process. They become trolls. You might have to kill them. The city dies. Whatever. It's part of the process once again. But I would have a slew of them. If you go with the 425 right now, there's a little corner of our map. It's like 6 or 7 of them bastards. We're ready. Hit the DMs. I got you. But it's and I'm fairly certain that there's a lot of other nations that are good. That have the same thing going on. So I would make a big push for that if you're above nation 1,000. Man, cut your losses. Whether you spend money or not, bring your whole fucking crew. We'll find a place for you, man. We will. Trust that. I'll put up for something. What is the next topic? Let's kind of move on.
Let me add a couple thoughts. I think that the distilling process that Holbrook talked about, how needing 2 to 3 merges to get like a decent crew together, that distilling process has already happened in the older nations. Like the people who are still here are competitive and are playing to win, and they're driven, they're interested, they're engaged with the game. And I have found from talking to people in younger nations that you get a mix, right? You get some people in off the street who saw an ad and don't really know what they're doing, and people who don't really like fall in love with the game and fall in love with the competitive aspect of it. And if you're that one player trying to drive up that enthusiasm for the rest of your crew, it is very draining and will eventually burn you out. There are a lot of nations, to LG's point, there are a lot of nations who are openings for you, or you and a small crew, or you and a large crew to come down and play with like-minded folks. Hang on one second. I muted you. If you figure out what was going on in the background, put a message in the chat and I'll unmute you. I was just saying, people who are like-minded. You want to play with like-minded individuals. You want to play with people who are kind of in it for the same reasons that you are. And for me, that meant, you know, trying to compete and trying to win events, and people who were engaged and were thoughtful about building their cities and asking questions and helping each other, and kind of we all grow together. And that mentality is something that really resonates with me, and you know, it's part of the reason why 621 is a good fit for me. Next topic, LG, was dragons versus drill equipment. This is a Holbrook topic. Holbrook, you wanna lead
let
us off?
Holbrook run on that one, man. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's not really much to say. It's just trying to help people again. Like, the dragon is sexy, you know? I love my dragon. But if we're being honest, the dragon is a way worse spend than just... I specifically think drill master officer equipment is where it's at right now.
And is that because you think more players have already maxed out war equipment, and so they're going to have lower levels of drill? What would you say to somebody who had kind of equivalent levels across those two officers?
I mean, I wouldn't bet my life on this, but I believe all of the stuff that you get with a drill equipment upgrade is valuable to you. But if you're a long-range city, then your war officer equipment upgrade, maxing that, you're going to get a lot of like mid upgrades, which are not really going to be relevant to you, or even long-range HP, which even if you are long-range HP is not exactly exciting. But I think all of the drill equipment upgrades are valuable to you. So I would go maybe between 20 and 50% more aggressive on the drill equipment upgrades than I would on the war.
Specifically, just, you know, the drill equipment upgrades include a lot of the reduction stuff with Titans and things like that. They're not only more sexy, but they're so much more effective if you can get to the gold standard. You know, again, you know, what type of levels of spending we're talking about here. But if we're going to make a suggestion, you know, and to boot on what Holbrook's talking about, yeah, dragon's sexy, but man, don't let it take, unless you're, I don't want to say like, unless you're officers or units, I don't want to say that. But like, you know, everyone likes to spend money where they like to spend money, and I hate to spend people's money for them, but if you got a limited budget, like a super limited budget, and you're not just, you know, whatever, if you're worried about the money that you spend on the game, let's hang off on the dragon, you know? Let's buy your, you know, your first 3 packs of your officer equipment, and you know, so maybe a couple of those little gold ticket things that you know, mess around with it. Because we can get to the gold standard, especially if it's not open. Because a lot of people's officer equipment, the gold stuff isn't open yet, right? And you know, I know, you know, the guys are joshing. I mean, I always talk about the free player, but I feel like they're like so many, you know, like or the limited people that are spending money on the game are so much more than the people that are spending money on the game. So whatever. I'm a marketing guy, so it's like my money flows with the volumes. You know, but these guys who are spending money, whatever it is, you know, there's obviously levels to it. But man, you're gonna get so much more bang for your buck if you can get that gold, those gold, you know, whatever items, or I don't even know what you call them, but the gold level of the officer equipment. You can get essentially what those are, guys. They're island items, you know. Each one of them is an island item that I spent a fuck ton of money on over the years.
Yep.
And throw that out there. I spent a fuck ton of money on my island over the years to get it where it's at, and now I can just buy it in the drill equipment, you know. So do yourselves a favor and, you know, let the dragon stay like a little baby for a little while, and at least get the gold tickets, you know, open, and allow those skills to be active, because just opening the skill will get you so much more.
I think also with the dragon, you know, it's easy to tell if you're a max spec player. It's easy to tell if you're a low spend player. Things get a lot murkier, you know, as you are in between those extremes. The thing I would think about for the dragon is, you know, the dragon levels are upgrading your attack percentages, and it's an attack that applies to all troops, so you have to take that into account, but compare that to the other sources of attack that you have available in your city, whether it be officers or officer equipment or something, what have you, and think about whether that attack
You can literally get that
actually
same percentage for
efficient.
like $10, bro. Comparable to like hundreds with the, with the whatever the dragon. Not $10, but like a lot less than on, officer drill equipment, whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think then the bigger the spender you are to where you're going to get your dragon to at least level 15, then the dragon becomes another fleet size increase option. And I think for, people, especially in older nations who have had more time to develop, the other major sources of fleet increase are maxed or their island items, which are typically not a good buy. And so, think about if you're going to go up past a certain point on your dragon level, make sure that you've got the juice to go all the way to 15 and that you're going to collect enough dies to at least get some fleet expansion out of it. I think the minimum required is 550. You need 150 to unlock one of the wounded capacity dragons and then another 400 to get the red dragon for the first fleet increase. I think higher level spenders who aren't max buying but have maxed out a number of other sources for fleet expansion. Fleet size is important, and the dragon is the new way to increase your fleet. But if you are not going to get up to the level that you need to, level 15 on the dragon, then plus 550 dies, which those are going to be more expensive than the level 15 on the dragon. At least for me, they have been so far.
It's about 5-6 G's,
I think if you did it slow, you could do it for 4,000, but that's still not pocket change. You can upgrade a lot more for 4,000.
Yeah, and so if you're not going to go all the way to the fleet expansion, then the only calculus for you is comparing that attack percentage increase versus other sources. If you're in the position where you've maxed out most or 95% of the other sources of fleet expansion, that's where I think the dragon starts to shine more for folks who are bigger spenders but don't have everything maxed.
I would only add one more thing to it, which is like just to give balance. Drill officer equipment is better. If you're spending above that, then dragon is fine, but you probably shouldn't be spending on like officer skins unless you're already maxing your dragon. Like I feel like that's a good range. Like stay off the skins and go to dragon if you can afford it, but stay off the dragon and go back down to drill officer equipment if you can't afford the.
Unless it's a priority event. If it's one of the priority events, and a team member asked me this today since we just did some priority stuff in our alliance. Team member asked me this. He's like, "Well, I don't spend much, but like if I wanted to spend some of this on on some wasteland stuff, to charge the button or to be able to parachute, once or twice, blah blah blah. Yeah, man, cool. Like do your thing. But just I never want to hear the excuse of I don't have any gold or speed for this attack. That's all. That was my response. So.
Yeah,
I think that's for what it's worth.
I think the idea there is like don't buy it for the skins, but if you're buying it for an event that's a priority and that gives you enjoyment, that's a different conversation, right?
Or even if you're buying it for the merit and you happen to get the skin with it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Especially for bigger spenders, Polar and Wasteland are given pretty good merit right now. Although, maybe we can talk about this later. I feel like the Wasteland matchups have been terrible, and makes Wasteland more expensive to get merit than Polar. I feel like should be the reverse. But Polar and Wasteland are good sources of merit, especially compared to, like if I look at the weekly total from EW versus the weekly total for Polar, it's a lot more for Polar. I'm sure LG it's the same for you guys.
Yeah, it's like double.
Yeah, you get like 900 for winning, 150 for knocking challenge.
Correct.
Yeah, and then you get like 2250 for a round of Polar.
I mean, I'll just say, if I play a full round of Polar, it costs me 200,000 gold. If I play a full round of Wasteland, even boarding around, whatever relative, it's like so much less. so much less. So
You know,
far, anyway. And maybe
it's
it's
less-
because we're.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. You're probably gonna say what I'm gonna say. So go ahead.
Right, because we don't have like good opponents. So it costs me less gold, but probably more money because I need to use more gems on items. The last run I was like just parachuting around to empty towers because I wanted to get up to the next merit rank. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that.
Yep.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm used
hopeful
to doing that
Canada
anyway.
goes for
You
us.
know, like kind of
Yeah.
making sure that I can get my merit at least, right? Specifically with the opponents. So like I find myself as soon as the dinger, start the second one, porting to the, center and speeding around just to grab those extra points from the, first tower grab or whatever it is.
Yeah, they're assholes
So-
for that. They're assholes for that.
Sorry.
V10, why not? You can jump in.
Merit too.
No. But all right, here's what I'll tell you what I do because I feel that right. Like there's a limited
fine.
number of enemies. I went to the top. I ported to the top where
I
nobody was
was
going.
like, no, I was there. I was walking. I was like, you know what?
Oh
I'm
no.
there.
I waited
No.
for you to go to the right, and I went to the left.
No, I was like,
All right.
oh,
All right.
port. I was like, all right, cool. Like, and then I clicked through this. I was like, big bird. I get distracted and then play.
All right. We'll talk about it
But,
offline.
Yeah, it just get hard because like we're all trying to get our merits, and I'm like, how do you get your merits without spending like the gems? Like you're literally gonna spend like $30 to like try to get it like halfway through those things. And it's just like
I mean,
$30.
I agree with you. Listen, but $30 comparable to what you would be spending in a polar, right? Speeding between 3 minutes each tower, right? And depending, how people play, or even if you were to play like 255, if somebody does come after you, like we just had 255 in polar, and we mess around with them because they love to just walk us down, So we mess around with them. We'll speed in if we get a weird scout with like only 5 or 6 guys in it. But what do? They just send 50 behind it. It's like, now here comes the speed Mayday team, fucking zipping their asses in there. But it's a 3-minute run to do that. 3.5 minutes to get to the H tower on the other side of the fucking Capitol. It's like 4+ minutes. So I would personally rather spend the $30 on whatever than speed back and forth at 4 minutes. And even if you were slow walking, if you're part of that Mayday team from 255, you're hitting the speed button 5 or 6 times to catch that defense 4+ minutes away. That shit sucks.
You're still
man.
spending that. You're still spending that 30 or 40 in Polar too because obviously you want the fast recall to come back to save you speed.
Yeah, correct. It's dude, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's relative with the gems because of the fast recall, 100%. Because you don't want to speed back 4 fucking minutes. It's one thing to speed there 4 minutes. You can't speed back 4 minutes too. Eventually you have to if you're in a tough match or trying to win. Again, it's all depending on who you're playing. But yeah, man, that shit's crazy. I find myself spending like 20 to 25% of what I spend in polar. So for us, we're gonna play polar and hang out, but it's not a priority for us in complexity.
Well, obviously there's like, I was a big spender when the game first came out. Obviously, when I left my nation, I was a C41 before I moved to Mad City, which was like way ahead of mine. But I was still a C41. Now I'm still a C41, but my priorities have changed as far as like, what am I gonna compete with? Polar is kind of, I like it because it's like fast and you get a lot of fights, but it's like it's not worth the shooting gold in my opinion. And I'm more now like, hey, I'm gonna save all my gold for Void or Frenzy because I feel like I can get more battles there with the right nation. We're matching with the right nation. At 255 was so awesome. You guys were so awesome, and obviously the score was like too much and it's pointless. But it was like, that's what I want. I would spend 100, 200k gold for those type of matches.
Agreed, bro.
Because it's like, it gets my adrenaline going, man.
And that's why you're in 621, bro, right? And you know what I'm saying? And that's why you're there. And that's why you left your nation to go there, right? Is to experience those things. And you know what? Nothing for nothing. And you could probably speak on this. Like, comparable to the way you built your other C41 and 372, comparable to the C41 that you have now in 621. I bet your spend's different. I bet you might even be spending more money on consumables and things like that just to partake in in the crazy fucking whatever elite war that you guys got going on next week, or the void war against like us, or like you find yourself doing things like that. I bet.
There's a couple things that my priorities have changed because of what the nation is more geared toward, and I don't necessarily mind that. But there's certain things I'm like, I told them before, like, hey, I'm not gonna go full on polar or wasteland. Like, it's not worth it to me. Like stuff like that. But all the other elite sports, I will go hard because that's 800-900 merits you're gonna get. So it's like, okay, if we win, we're getting a crap load than I would if I'm just like, not challenging anybody. Or just like, I'm gonna get way more merits in elite four than I am in polar and wasteland, like 100%. So I'm definitely gonna go hard with him. And
But that's also one of your guys' most priority events, I would assume. Right? Just based off of you guys being ranked number 2, blah blah blah, like so like that's your guys' priority. Right? Let's just call that what it is. So and I doubt you'd be able to tell your leadership, I'm not spending an elite war because I don't like it, right? Like I doubt you'd be able to say that with all due respect. Maybe the other events, but not elite war. And like those are the things, man. It just changes your mentality. Which is
they definitely vetted me before I came. Like, hey, this is our expectation. You're in or out. And it's like, I'm in. Like, it's better than what I have now. Like, they bet you or they tell you straight up what it's going to be, and you're with it or not with it.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool, man. I'm glad you're happy over there because it's definitely one of the. It's more competitive, and you're one of those guys that have been around, like, probably at the original Discord servers I've been in anyway, so it's good to have you still around and be happy,
Yeah, I'm gonna channel my inner league god and say not everybody can win GC, and if you're not winning GC, you can save a lot, and not everybody can be number 2 in Elite Wars, and if you're not really focusing on Elite War, then you can save a lot. And so on and so on. Like, picking your events matters. And if you're skipping Elite War and GC and maybe even KE, then it's a whole lot easier to just burn your whole fucking bag on Polar and Wasteland or whatever.
So what Oliver is saying is we're all whip his ass in Elite War, which is cool. We appreciate that whole
sure.
We get it. We get
Absolutely.
it.
I'll bring 89 people to learn from you on how to beat my ass. It's not a problem.
But that's like, leading into, maybe a little bit of the next topic is those event choices, like that's so big, and because Camel doesn't give a fuck about us in any capacity, they're just going to continue to throw events our way. I mean, what did we get the other night? We got Cannon, we got Alliance Bounty, we got like 4 events in like one night, and it was like, oh, yeah. So I mean, you guys have to, man. You have to. There's only 1255 out there that can be number 1 in everything for whatever reason. Shout out to them. Yeah, man. In my opinion, you really, really have to hone in your team, or at least the leadership. Choose your guys's, route. Whatever that looks like. At 425, we essentially just, leadership got together, put their heads, made a few options, and threw it out to the team. Nobody picked Polar. I'll just throw that out there. Not one person on my team, or in GFK for that matter currently, picked Polar as a quote priority event. And it was in 2 bundles of, so we pick a max of 3 events. Right? Anything outside of those 3 events, obviously you're more than welcome to go spend all your gold or whatever. But please, in these, say, 3 events, from a leadership perspective, I don't want to hear, and I say this majority of the time to the very low spender or free-to-play player, please, play Iron Blood, play Polar War, play whatever the fuck you want. But in Elite War and Wasteland and Head of State, when there's 2 voids, these 3 events, I don't want to hear you say, I can't speed, I'm out of gold. And I just saw you in Iron Blood speeding around fucking 2 days ago. Like, that'll piss me off. So do your best to compete or have a good time in all events because you're an active player and you want to play all events, because I do, a lot of people do. But I don't think you can prioritize or expect your team to show up, you know, to everything that Camel's offering right now. I think it's too much, so you got to really just focus it in. So for
These are just
425,
whales. These people that spend 2 times a house payment.
Hey Havoc, I muted you. I think you were talking to some folks you were with in real life. Just pop a message in the chat and I'll unmute you when you're ready.
so for us, we're going to continue to focus on Elite War. We're going to make Head of State a thing, for which will include a frenzy, I guess, but only when there's 2 voids in it, like this current bracket for us. When there's 2 frenzies, we'll play and we'll have a good time, but we'll be saving for the other events and the other, you know, kind of Head of State when there's 2 voids. And there's a little bit more on the table for this. So we kind of honed in on those things. I think with those particular 3 events, I think it'll allow us to, you know, maybe come up and squeeze into that top 5 for Elite War. I think we'll be able to see what Wasteland brings in the near future with the matchups and stuff. I agree with the Big Bird Man. It really sucks. But I'll also take your note out of the chat that you mentioned the other day. I do think it might have something to do with, you know, us taking an L, you know, through the process when we probably shouldn't have. Or maybe you didn't have a choice in yours much, but
Yeah, we had
you know,
we had sinned. That was not by
Yeah.
choice.
yeah, you know, it's just so you didn't have much of a choice in yours. I'm sure we could have pulled out ours against 528, but you know, again, it was one of those things where we were GC finals the next, you know, like that night. So we, you know, let them take that advantage on us. But I do think it very well might have something to do with, you know, why we're continuing to play the, you know, bottom of the board for Congo's sake. You know, in our match we had a, you know, from what people say is a good alliance up there, but they're in the 900s, man. You know, like they're, you know, we're 425, they were 923, I believe. You know, and they're a great alliance. They showed up with 60, 70, some shit like that. I heard they were one merge nation, I believe. Somebody, you know, Holbrook or somebody kind of confirmed that for me. But, you know, they showed up in numbers, but they couldn't do anything against us, man. You know, they took 1 tower for 1 second and then, you know, got stuck in the corner for 40 minutes or however long the event is. You know?
Yeah.
They tried,
I think they might be unmerged, in fact. Like no mergers.
Yeah, again,
All right.
they haven't had a merger yet. Both of us are still waiting.
And you know what's funny, LG, is like, I don't know if funny is the right word. I mean, they're a very good nation. They've got a good reputation in that area. But I think that's part of the problem too, is like, you put those guys against somebody who is more in their range, they're going to come to play. But when they, you know, see a 425 and you and Mental and all those guys, like, you know, I think that changes the conversation, as it should. Like, leaders shouldn't, you know, be pushing people to spend a bunch of money on
yeah, I was just gonna
an
say, it's
unwinnable
like, if
battle.
that
Yeah.
happens, yeah, please don't try. You know, like just stay in the corner, log out, go fucking farm some shit. You know, or kill a farm in your nation or something. You know, you're better off. You know, sure, try to come out. Like I find myself, Big Bird. You know, going back to the mental or the, you know, I have money, right, and a bit of it. So I have no problem getting my merit in other capacities. So I find myself not even being in the attacks. Like I retreat and go hang out in the S tower, and you know, for the guys that do come out of the whatever, you know, to try to get, you know, merit themselves, you know, they'll get a couple of the points down there. So I find myself doing those things. But yeah, if you've had that very weighted, you know, matchup and it's not in your favor, man, just take your L, lick your wounds, you know, and come back, you know, another day when you have a, you know, Camel not sticking it to you, because it's gonna happen. You know, it just happened to 425 in the head of state bracket, you know, not too long ago for us. Like we just got stuck to those goals, you know. But it was a good time here and there. But yeah, like that would 100% be my suggestions. I don't like it. I don't think that they should be putting those alliance matchups. It's different for nation matchups because there's arguments to be had that a 900 nation can come down to some of these 300 nations and fuck them up, right? Just because of activity and all those things that are happening in the game right now. But you're not going to be able to do alliance for alliance with, you know, 900s versus 400s. I just don't think that's pliable, you know, especially with the, you know, with the active ones, you know. It's like, you know,
I think it takes some outliers, right? Because the alliance average is going to be lower just from the time difference between the two, and so just I think they're, you know, you're starting to talk about outlier nations that have something special for them to be able to keep up when the average is not in their favor. And LG, to latch onto a point you made, I mean, I think bigger spenders, I do some things very similar to what you do in Wasteland, right? I thought I was parachuting to a tower that was not going to take a slow attack. Sorry, beat time, that's my bad. But I think, you know, and I think this applies to Polar as well. Holbrook, you and I have talked about some of this privately. I think if you split up the attack lanes in Polar and in Wasteland, and I should say also, like, I'm the only one in my alliance who likes Polar, so it's definitely not a priority for us. But if you split up the attack lanes, you create opportunities for your not big spenders to get, you know, through the first couple merit ranks. And my personal feeling, and I'm sure, you know, some of the other folks would say the same, is like, it's more valuable to the alliance for 50 people to unlock the first 2 ranks in merit than for me to unlock all the merit. So, you know, I think there are ways that you can set it up in Polar and Wasteland. And I think it has to be the big players putting some restrictions on themselves to give opportunities for the rest of the alliance to get some action. Because also too, like, if you can't even get into a single battle in Wasteland, because you can't catch up to the speeders and there just aren't going to be that many battles in the 45 minutes, you have no incentive to come back. Like, if you literally get nothing out of it, so you gotta figure out ways as bigger players and as leadership to kind of section off the map, I think is one way to do it, to give chances for everybody to at least unlock the first box, you know? And sometimes that's not gonna be possible, especially in Wasteland, because God, the matchups have just been, it's just not fun for either side, you know? But I think in Polar especially, you section off the map and you kind of force your speeders to go a little bit farther away for battles, you can kind of spread the love a little bit more.
So one of the things I do in Polar is I'm one of those guys who will go run and grab my merit quite quickly, right? It gives the team time to, like, open up, like, those little boxes in front of you, and then when the kind of the center opens, they kind of organically send out, you know, to those first, you know, few towers with, you know, whatever. We show up with, like, call it 40 for conversation's sake. There's probably 10 or 15 people in each one of said towers, or, you know, maybe up to 20. I'll send just axes, bro. You know, I won't even send titans or my cannons or anything like that. Once my merits open, I'll send just axes or, like, you know, some stupid mid-range filler or some dumb shit, just to kind of hold the battle up so they can kind of get the points as much as possible. So it's one of the things, it's kind of like the uranium giving, you know? Like, it's pretty common that I have, you know, well, actually it hasn't been common in the last few months, but over my gameplay of this game, it's been pretty common, man, where I feel like I've helped quite a few players in 425 and other alliances, you know, get more uranium with just lowering the shields, you know? And that's, I think it's worked out fairly well over the season. So if you play it right, and your whale type players like myself are smart, and they do want the team to grow, very similar to what Big Bird said. You want not just me and Mental to open up our merit boxes. You want the other 40 players that did take the time and effort to join said event to be able to get as many of those whatever merit tiers open as well. So again, I find myself because we get in brackets that are just ridiculous. We play 2-5-5, usually 6 out of 8 rounds of polar. So it's one of those things where get your points, guys. Get your free. I call it free merit. Because I don't want them to speed. I don't want them to do anything. That's But then they see me speeding around, and then somebody will share some shit, and people just they're warriors, man. So they want to fight. And I appreciate them and I love them for it. So, but yeah, we want to do everything we can to get those tiers open. And if it doesn't, it's not one of your priorities.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going. No, one thing I gotta say for Polar is people don't take advantage of the free items, like the recall. Like, it resets every single time, and people just don't even go in and collect that. Like, I had like 40 stocked up at one point in time, and so it literally costed me next to nothing to keep recalling.
So what he means, folks, is when the Polar item shop resets every week, the first fleet expansion and the first couple recalls only cost gold.
Exactly.
So, especially if you're not able to join for Polar every week, you can pick up, a handful every time, and you can build them up over time. I actually think you can extend that principle for mid to big spenders. If you're not going to go into a Polar round, but you're going to play it somewhat regularly, I would max out the number of 5 gem instant recalls you have.
Yeah. So after I think 4, it goes up to like 10 per each, right? So it's still also worth the buy to get the extra 4 every week as well for the 5 gems or whatever it is.
Yeah, if you're in that position where you're getting gems every week, I think that's a great idea. Because I know that we've had some contentious Polar matches where, it's a lot of fast recalls. I've used up the 40 before, and the price tag on those starts to get ridiculous. I mean, it goes like 5, 10, 15, 20. I think 25 or 30 is where it maxes out. But if you can build up some lower cost, whatever that means, items, especially when you can't make it for a given week, it means you can play it a little bit differently when you are able to finally show up. You have more mobility on the map.
I think you can also mix in just you can kind of take the temperature of the leadership based on, do they have a strategy for letting people get merit like you guys are talking about, but also when you first start as a leader, you just want to win and you want to help the team, and I got you guys, I'm gonna carry us to the finish line. But eventually you have to be dedicated enough or strong enough or whatever the right word is to say, we're not going to play all of these events and win half of them. We're going to focus on a couple of these events and try to win all of them. And you apply the same principle to whatever events you're playing. Like, if you're the whale, don't go into Polar and max everybody's buffs right away. Let somebody else spend some of their Polar stuff to get some free points, or not free, but cheap points with the early buffs. You have to think about all of that stuff as a leader. Like, whatever, I joined Wasteland today, or whatever, Friday. I joined Wasteland on Friday, and somebody was like, oh, this opponent looks like they suck. What if you sat it out? And I was like, all right, man, whatever. I'll just sit the event out. Because exactly like Bird was saying, if I just start parachuting everywhere and going straight to the base, nobody else is really going to have a chance for at least the path that I'm taking. And so you can kind of take the temperature of your leadership based on not what they're winning, but what they're giving the Alliance the ability to win without them participating. What they're giving up to make the Alliance stronger.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's interesting about Wastelands is you can leave all the fights to the rest of your team and still come behind them with parachutes and, you know, max out your merit. I think also too that's a good point about the charge for Polar and for Wastelands. Your biggest players, especially those guys, like if you're getting over, I'm thinking about Polar now, if you're getting over 319k regularly, then you don't need to be the person who is hitting the charge button. Especially those low level charges, like the later level charges are, you know, over 200-300 Polar gems to level it up. So maybe you're gonna have to have your bigger spenders there doing that. But the early levels, like if you're a big player, wait 5 or 10 minutes. Let's see how high the charge gets with the rest of the team, and then if no one else is jumping in, you can finish it off to 20.
I
think
agree.
also-
I mean, for us, we do
Oh, sorry.
very similar. You know, I was just kind of agreeing with you, Bird, man, because we're very similar. I don't even think we get to 20. I think our number is like 15. You know, and I tend to stay away from it. You know, probably the first 10 or 11 levels, somewhere around there. I feel like when it kind of, you know, whatever tapers off from, you know, people trying to whatever, because it gets more and more expensive as those levels go up, obviously. So you know. Once it kind of tapers off, yeah, so I usually get it to about 15 is where I get it. And then, you know, but to go back to where we were going before, everybody can get their merit regardless, so all you gotta do is hit the charge button, you know? And so, yeah, it's one of those things where we can cry about it all we want, but we all know what Camel's looking for, you know? They're looking for ways, specifically right now, to get us to spend more money. And then just look at what's happening in the game. Like, I know that we're all very smart people, you know, especially us whales, right? We didn't become successful, you know, because we're fucking idiots. So, like, just look what's happening in the game. They want our cash, you know, so they're matching us up with shit players to get us to fucking spend, you know? And I don't really know what else to say, you know? I would like to think that they gave us that crazy head of state matchup right before GC. Why? Because they wanted all 4 of those GC nations to spend as much as they could leading into GC finals. I can't, nobody can tell me otherwise, you know? And then looking at all these new releases of events and items and all those things, and, you know, I do happen to follow some of their quarterly reports, and I just, you know that they didn't love their last one. You know, and so I feel like that's got a lot to do with it. You know, so that's why people aren't getting mergers as much as it'll reinvigorate the game, it'll this, it'll that. No, because people are already pot committed. The people that are there aren't going. You know, for this sort of reason. You know?
Yeah, I think also to talk about event priorities. I'm going to try and give some discrete examples, but, you know, what Holbrook was saying is if you try and play everything and just win some of the time, like, then your identity as a nation is like, well, we try hard, we have a certain level at all these different events, but we don't really excel at any one of them. And I think that when when merges become less frequent, like, part of your job in leadership in the top alliance of a nation is to shape your nation identity. And you got to meet your nation with where you're at in terms of, you know, player base, including your spender base. But, you know, I think about like 896 for an example. They are great at KE, and Relly will correct me if I'm wrong, but they're undefeated in Void. And so, like, that's part of their identity. And I know from talking to Relly separately, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but they've made some deliberate choices to opt out of other events to kind of keep things focused on KE. And I think, you know, having that focus as a nation is something you build an identity around. You know what I mean? Some nations are GC nations. They're in it to win it. And it becomes part of your nation identity. And I think that having that focus and deliberately shaping your nation identity is something that good leaders should be doing.
It has to evolve too.
Yeah.
785 won 2 GCs. Now we have no chance. We had like a 75 or 80% kill event, strongest commander, whatever, void or frenzy, it didn't matter. We were winning, and then the nation changed after the merge, and now we focus on polar and wasteland because that's what we can win. But I would rather win those events all the time and lose the other stuff because we can't win it anyways, versus winning everything 35% of the time. Then it's boring. Then we just lose 2/3 of the events.
Yeah, this is pretty much
Nobody likes
exactly
to
why.
lose. You will lose players if you do it like that. You know, you just gonna. Nobody likes to lose. You know, no.
And there's so many events, man. Now the Royal Arena comes in.
Oh.
Like there's a new event every
They don't
I think
come.
you're. Sorry, I was going to say I think you're totally right, and I think that the real thing that they're missing the most is not necessarily that their nation or alliance can't make it. It's just that if you go play with people who know the game well and are already strong, you're not only going to upgrade faster because you have more money to build your permanent power, but you're going to upgrade better because they're going to guide you in the right direction.
Correct. And what's also cool is you know, these players when they come, you know, a lot of times there's you know, I don't want to call them followers, but you know, there's loyal, you know, buddies. They're friends. You know, they want to play with you. You know, sometimes those people don't make it into our alliance for whatever reason because they can't make a League of War time, right? Sometimes you know, the time zone just you know doesn't work for you. You know, and you're not willing, or you can't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I get that. You know, I wouldn't do it. You know. So, you know, the long and short of it is, you know, those guys go into the, you know, whatever, call it the second or third alliance. It just makes, you know, it makes the game more fun just because you have people, you know, I've spent time in my second and third alliances, I haven't recently, but the leadership over there is good, you know, and we have a leadership Discord where, you know, obviously we can, you know, communicate and things like that from a nation level. And, you know, I feel like it's the same, you know, at least over in this number 2 alliance, the leader in the number 3 alliance did come from our newest merge, but he's been great, you know, and why has he been great? Because he fucking listens, you know, that's it. Sure, he's got some things to add to the discussion, you know, whatever, but when I hit the slash or at, you know, June, right, from stop the fucking traps, you're just leaking points like a sieve, you fucking idiots, right? They stop. Simple, it's done, it's over with. And that's why it works. You know? That's why it works. They stop.
LG, I noticed that.
Okay.
LG, I noticed that GC was not on your list. Is that because it's not a current event, or is there a change there?
No. So for us, I mean, GC is we're playing until we lose, right? So you know, like you know, you can't go from being the champion to not giving a shit about GC. I think it's you know, an assumed, you know, at least for 425. That's more of a nation event than it is an alliance event from a leadership perspective for us anyway. We kind of chatted about it for a second when we were in the Discord speaking amongst just GFK leadership. But for us, that's more of like GC is like a nation event. So it wasn't in our list of choices, you know, for our different pools of events, if you will. But you know, but yes, 425 GC is, you know, we're gonna be there until someone beats us. So whenever that's gonna be. So yeah, we're not gonna be changing that. But I do like the fact, and maybe you guys can tip in on this, and you know, some people are, you know, on the head of state thing or not. You know, I know Holbrook's team isn't, but I do know that you guys over there in 621, you know, kind of care about the head of state stuff. So I'll ask you this: do you guys, whatever, Void or Frenzy, doesn't matter? Because, you know, we talked about it in 425, and we were like, you know what, like, let's fucking drop the double Frenzy one and, like, you know, really just kind of focus in on the double Void one, you know, regardless of who we get, you know, and go from there. And I think that boded really well with at least on my leadership team. You know, again, when the choices started rolling through, it was more of, you know, they just agreed with us. Now, mind you, I'm a salesman at heart, so, you know, I say things in my presentation that, you know, they should, you know, choose with what I chose. But the long and short of it is yeah, the 2-time Void head of state, you know, again, similarly to the event that we're currently in right now, you know, with the head of state is, you know, is what we're gonna, you know, kind of throw on the event page and see if we can't go pretty hard on that. But when this, you know, next, call it 3, you know, 6 weeks is over, then, you know, we'll kind of be reabsorbing, you know, our consumables and, you know, gas and stupid shit like that. during the frenzy more than once. So I thought that was something that was a little bit different than the normal whatever head of state, because I'm still just not a frenzy guy for whatever reason. I think it's fun to have some cool battles like we did with C621 and 567 recently in our head of state battle. But I think if it was void, I think it would be, I don't want to say a different outcome and like say I'm talking shit, but I think the battles and the strategy and everything would be different, right? Just call that for what it is. So I think the strategies and stuff like that for the frenzies are a little bit different for me. And the fact that there's no troop loss and, just, I don't know, whatever. It's cool for the tower battles though. I mean, some of the battles that we had with 621 were awesome. But, when you're losing, right, like, how many times are you going to do that? You know what I'm saying? And, and shout out to you guys' team showing up with, the participation and, and all that stuff. But, I mean, we were, 40 versus 60 or 45 versus 60, whatever it was. We were losing, So it's like, all right, man, I'm going to take my fucking ball and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hang out by myself, Because it was, there's only so much of that you can do. But if it was void, man, again, bro, like, it would just be different, it would just be different. I'm going to be hunting, I'm going to be hunting for everything all night long. And even if we lose, I'm going to be killing some bitches, And, I don't know, I feel like it's just different. So, yeah, I'm all for the 2-time void head of state, even though I don't love that the frenzy's in there, kind of forcing me to play it. But I look at it like I'll try to get, first overall or like a cool skin for the nation, or something like that. That's what I'm going to try to do.
Yeah, candidly, I had not considered those two as distinguishable. I think it's a pretty astute point that you've made, distinguishing the two of them, and I'm going to give it some more thought, and I think we might interject that into the 621 conversations. So, cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, it just made more sense. It just made more sense for us, and I don't know. I like killing troops. And as much as Camel's trying to take that away from me, unless I want to have a civil war, I don't think I want to take away from that, at least from my team, because we like killing people, and I feel like we haven't really killed anybody since like Rats. That's twice now I mentioned his name, so fucking shout out that retard. But like, yeah, I don't feel like we've killed anybody like really nicely, you know what I'm saying? Like, that I could call home mom about in some time, and I'd like to, entertain those things, and when those times do come, they're amazing, and and hope they live on for a while. So yeah, I just love Void War, man. I do, and typically, and I don't know if it's just God or the world or whatever. Typically, my Void War Sundays, man, I'm able to just sit down and focus and relax, whether, there's golf on TV or what. I'm able to just, whereas Frenzy, man, I got a birthday party or a fucking flight or this or that or whatever. So I do feel like personally that I typically have much more time to just leave me the fuck alone and, on Void War Sundays. So I don't know if that's just the world helping me out or not, but I feel like that's the case.
So you're telling us that you're basically scheduling vacation around Frenzy, which makes sense.
I mean, I don't do that. My wife schedules all the vacation time, man. And she even packs for me, bro. I'm like one of those guys. So, yeah. So I just fucking show up. Oh, we're going? Okay. Like, I just spent the week in Siesta Key. It was great over there for the week. It was fun right before summer's ending. Yeah. But I forgot completely about it, man, until, I was told that I had to, drive 4 hours, It's like, hey, we're leaving tomorrow morning. All right. Yeah, that sucks. So that was right in the end of the void or the top Frenzy or whatever the hell it was.
How are you guys' head of state matchups? Are they back to what they were, or are they still just play whoever?
I feel like it's back to, you know, I mean, it's not what it was, you know, with the 567, 621, 255 craziness, but it's something that, and I say this with respect to everybody, that I don't want to say it'll be easy, but it's something that we should win, you know, um, without going, you know, crazy. But
Is that a
there's-
thing? Did they fix them? Was it a problem, or is this just 425?
I mean,
And I'm asking because 785 actually has what looks much more reasonable. So I'm wondering if we just we expelled Vegas. So I'm wondering if
Yeah.
the battle power change made our head of state easier, or if everyone has more balanced head of states. That's where I'm
I
coming
mean, if Vegas is without Alliance, which I know him to be without Alliance, it 100% makes things a little bit easier. In a, you know, whatever way, you know, what it does is you're gonna be seeing a little bit more of a balance of power in your matchups via alliances more than likely. But with Vegas not being one of the guys, got what, 4 monster cities, right? Something like that.
That's right.
Cooper,
Yeah,
to
so
answer
he's
your
got-
question, Cooper. Sorry, Ego. To answer your question real quick, the algorithm or matchmaking definitely did get fixed. I saw a bunch of matchups and everybody kind of went back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, I know 255 got like their normal, you know, matchups with like, you know, the people that they've been playing for 100 years and they've been crying about. 425 got a bunch of matchups that, you know, that we haven't seen in a long time. I feel like I've seen a lot of these nations in like my 357 brackets. Like we have.
Is it just me or you got cut off?
I was wondering the same thing. Well, while he's gone, I'll ask.
From the chat.
While he's gone, I'll ask a follow-up question, not necessarily for him, but for everyone. I wonder if they mess up the matching, or if the matching will just be more crazy for the double frenzy, and it'll be more
I mean, I
conservative.
personally think they just did what I think they pulled a fast one this last matchup right before GC finals. That's my opinion. You know, I could be wrong. You know, I
We
could
lost
just.
you for a minute, boss. You're gonna have to start over.
Can you guys hear me?
We can't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
one.
Yeah. Now. I thought I had an
Okay.
issue as well, so I jumped
Yeah,
over.
we can hear you.
Gotcha, my bad. If you put your. I just lost what the question was. I'm sorry. I'm high.
We were just talking about matchups. Just talking about whether the matchups got more
I do
reasonable.
personally believe right before GC finals is when the last head of state matchups came out, which is what the one we just had with like 5, 6. I do believe that the tech guy sat down and said, okay, I know how to give Cameron more money. You know, we put all these guys together who, you know, whatever, like to spend money and make sure that they win certain events and right before GC finals, and hopefully we'll be able to squeeze their bags. I do think that somebody with a little bit of smarts over in Camel, you know, did something like that, specifically in our matchup. You know, whether they did that in the matchups, you know, above us, I don't know. But it's just wonky that all 4 GC finalists or people that care about GC or, you know, whatever, they're all in the same bracket, all fighting each other. Just a little wonky in my, you know, 2 cents. But I've been hearing it for everybody, you know. I'm in the Enoch server. They have, you know, a head of state, you know, matchup, you know, and just watching the screenshots fly through this time comparable to last time. All I hear is people, you know, like 219 and 255 crying about, you know, playing the same people that they were, you know, playing for the last 5 years. So I feel like it's more what we're used to, and I feel like for at least for our bracket this last time, it was a little crazy that we had everybody in the same bracket. It was like I don't want to call it Super Bowl, but it was like, yeah, you got like the four top, you know, whatever nations minus, you know, 621 and under, like right there, you know, all in the same bracket. So yeah, so somebody did that on purpose, in my opinion, right before DC final.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for 896, our previous matchups, especially the last bracket, I think along with a lot of other people's, seemed wild to us. And the bracket we have now, honestly, almost feels like a vacation for a month and a half.
Yes.
So it's seemingly gone back to normal, or they put the guardrails back on or something. I'm not sure, but we don't really feel threatened by any of the nations in our bracket compared to last time.
We're in the middle of the quarter right now, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I thought, some of the conspiracies flying around. I think LG, our bracket might even be just a separate conversation. I agree. It felt like we were getting gouged right before GC. But I think about 385, I think, had 904 in the last bracket. And I saw that as maybe a experiment by Camel to see, like, how do these younger nations match up against the older nations, however you're, measuring that, but how do the two match up? And my optimistic thought was that maybe they were going to take a page from Barry's book and, merge with a much wider lens. But I don't know, it felt like last time was a little bit of an experiment for Camel for whatever they were looking for, and this one felt more in line with what you'd expect. I don't know. I guess I have a question for you guys. I don't. Maybe it's because 255 was in our bracket last time. I wasn't really worried about who won the head of state bracket. I tend to take each kill event as its own entity, in part because there's no real, other than getting like the top skin LG, which I understand why that would be something that would motivate for a player at your level, but it's not really a big incentive to me.
I wouldn't even use the skin.
Right, exactly.
I prefer other skins,
Yeah, and so I don't know. Last time was different. We all knew 255 was going to win everything, so maybe it felt different. And not to take anything away from 255, they definitely earned each of their victories. But color me unsurprised that they came in with 3 stars.
I didn't have to play 255, but I had to play 567 and 261. So, whatever that looked like. So, yeah. The moment I saw that, I just shook my head. I just shook my head. I was like, what? I said, what kind of drugs is so, but it was easy from, again, from a leadership, optic, it was easy for me as a leader to say, all right, guys, focus in. We're GC finaling it up. We don't care about Wasteland. We don't care about head of state. We don't care about absolutely fucking nothing right now other than going to get this victory in GC. And because we're not winning this head of state, so, let's have some fun with 567. Let's play our game like normal, but, save for void. That was the direction.
I think Big Bird, the only thing that you could maybe do, I don't really pay attention to the overall structure of the event, but we're about to do a Void Frenzy Void, right? And if you look at your bracket, so if I look at mine, I have 799 and then a bunch of other nations that I don't. We could win or lose.
You don't know as well? Yeah.
Well, we could win or lose. Like we're playing Woody this weekend, Void. We could win or lose that. I have no idea, honestly. They could definitely win, but let's pretend that we won this week against Woody, and I'm just gonna assume that 799 will win. I won't necessarily want to play 799 in the final Void because they're just gonna win. They go harder. They definitely want to win. It's not a priority for us. So I can either focus on the Frenzy also and then know that I'm gonna lose that Void, but you could throw the Frenzy just to have a better Void. That's the only way that the structure could maybe be interesting.
If you can play with the brackets to your advantage, man, I mean, I love those strategic plays. I do it in GC. I don't know if anybody picked up this year, but, we didn't think that we had anybody that would really give us a fair run for our money, so we took first place. You know, we didn't have to drop out of the top 4 and go, fifth round, whatever, and trying to kick somebody out in the semis or anything like that. So I like to play those little strategic plays and, kind of do things the best you can. And if you can, I don't want to say that let's just say that I didn't mind losing 5, 6, 7 because I knew I wouldn't go play 2, 5, 5. Let's just say,
Right.
Now I definitely did not throw the event, and 5, 6, 7 came in there and did their thing to us dirtily. They did it without asking, and all of the above. And it was fun to play those guys. I love those guys. They're my favorite nation of But long and short of it is I had no problem losing that event because I knew I wasn't playing 2, 5, 5 and Void. And what did we get? We got 2, 4, 6 in Void. Our fat friends that love to give away troops and resources. So it's like it was a great Void, and it was great. We also had to go see 261 in the Frenzy final, but again, Frenzy, it's like, listen guys, save up, let's have fun with these guys, let's do our thing, but don't go crazy, keep the recruits and their fucking gas and all that stuff, and it was nice going into phase 5 with those guys for the most part. I think we had like a 500 or 700 million lead or something like that going into phase 5. But it didn't matter when they show up the way they show up, Yeah, I appreciate their strategic plays to be able to put yourself in the best position you can. Because you have to. You should anyway, Yeah.
Hey, Beef Cannon, can you mute? Holbrook, I hadn't thought about aiming the brackets like that for Ohio State. And I guess more personally, I just, I think it's a smart thing that you pointed out. And I think having those conversations is important for leadership. The head of state, overlay on KE, I just don't think about it that much. I kind of decouple them into, all right, this is our opponent for this Void or Frenzy, and I don't know. I guess I want to win them all, but maybe that's contrary to what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, it's good. That's good for 61.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
Not a horrible mindset, Not a horrible mindset, for sure.
But I think seeing the bracket and having some, I think a lot of us can tell, especially if you're playing nations that are, in your range and are well known to you, you have a sense of who's more or less likely to win, and you can think ahead about, what you're going to need to do in each round to be ready for the potential future opponents.
I mean, also what Head of State is, in my opinion, again, I try to, I'm a tech guy, I'm a this guy, whatever, business-wise. I personally think Head of State for Camel is the removal of the need of a VIP anymore. If you notice, you get the Head of State matchups on Friday, before, Sunday, usually your release date of knowing who you fight. Regardless of the event being open, you still wouldn't know you would fight until Sunday when the event actually opened, until VIP came. Now that VIP is kind of, for the most part, fucking not needed, and Camel is big enough to where they don't need that one-to-one relationship with whales and things of like that nature anymore. I personally think they gave us what we asked for, which is our opponent matchups and things of that nature, in 6 weeks in advance. So now they don't have to fucking talk to us anymore. So they give us less reasons to have interactions with VIP and things like that. It's just my, whatever, conspiracy theory.
I agree with you, but it also forces you to take at least one Frenzy seriously, which I think they also want, and you didn't want, but that's what they did.
I definitely didn't want. Correct. hate the double board of a frenzy one. We just got with these guys. That's just a dislike of frenzy. So I was glad the team agreed with me on the double void head of state. And then again, I do think it gives us another ample opportunity in an entire 6-week span. You know, for the most part, being able to you know, stack the bag a little bit.
You know what's
Because if we
interesting?
do
It
make
actually makes it easier to be a Void Nation, because if you don't care about Frenzy, you can take that L, which will give you an easier Void matchup in the third round.
Yes.
I don't know about you guys, but in the Young Nations, we're kind of liking Frenzy because they fight more. People are just not fighting in Void up here anymore. So I just was wondering, is that why you guys don't take Frenzy serious down there, because they don't fight in Frenzy, or it's just because it's a waste to you guys?
I mean, my opinion is a waste. You know, I hate to be spending all of those speeds and coordination and this, that, and the third, and consumables, and the troops don't disappear. You know, like, if I attack that sit, like, I want the troops to go. You know, like, and I say that with respect to all my buddies out there, whatever. But like, yeah, man, I want the troops to go away if I attack you, man, and we win. You know? And then the vice versa. If I lose, man, I want my troops to go away. I want to feel it. You know? I want my blood to fucking move, because, you know, like, whatever. I just had a heart attack this year, so I need my blood to move, you know, whatever. Whatever. Yeah.
Would you support a tower in Void, Lee God? Like, and maybe the tower can have a little bit of, like, you only lose a certain percent, a small percent of your troops, so people don't feel like it's too overwhelming, but it helps nations fight more in Void.
I wouldn't say no to any fight, right? So
It
at
should
the end
be
of the
like
day,
capital
anything
where
that
the
promotes-
losses
yeah.
are reduced.
yeah, I took the words right out of my mouth. If it was something like, I mean, again, I'm okay with it being full losses, right? Like, I'm okay with that, and I'm sure there's plenty of players in this chat that, you know, if you put a tower in a void, and, you know, anybody who wants to fight at that month, you know, we can get it. I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of teams that'll say, let's go, you know, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. You know, losses on both sides, vice versa. I wouldn't mind it, honestly, you know, but I don't think it would promote more than, you know, what you're seeing now. I mean, what I personally think is you just need to talk more shit, you know, just need to talk more shit.
I think the
People,
dynamics
you know,
change. I think the dynamics change, man. Like, you've grown up
Really?
with that excitement. Yeah, you've grown up with that excitement of Void, and you had less events. Now people join a new nation or whatever, and they're like, all right, I have 9 events where I need my fleets, and then I have one event where I can lose my fleet. So I'll just skip the one event where I can lose my fleet because I'm afraid to learn how to play this event. And my R5 told me that battle power is what's most important, and I'm afraid to lose my battle power. So if I just skip this event, then I can play 9 other.
It's easy to get excited about events where you lose troops when you're a whale, like you guys. But when you're like, I'm a T-38, and so I have to be very, very careful, because if I fuck up, you guys will kill me.
Bro, if you're worried about your
I'm-
troops, you've already lost.
Oh,
I think there's
but I have to be careful when I attack,
No, you
because
don't. Well, that's
if
for
one
sure.
of you are
Definitely.
watching, we had a talk in our alliance chat about Void, and they were talking about, you know, if a smaller player is coming to SOS us, should we reinforce and beat him up? I said yes, but circumstances pending. Watch out for that whale who is waiting for the second that battle ends, and he speeds in there, and 10 of us are there.
I mean, listen, if you're opening your shields with troops home, you should die. And I say that with respect, and I don't know your name or what nation
No,
you're
I
from.
don't mean people opening a shield. I mean, like, if we're reinforcing a player who forgot the shield or something.
Well, you
we have
shouldn't
to
be
watch out
reinforcing
for
a
you.
player without
Hey,
that
Bryce.
shield.
Bryce, I think
Right?
to your original question, we older players have a historical like community bias towards Void. Like a couple of years ago, I mean, LG, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but people got like showed out for Void. Frenzy was like, it's Frenzy. You know, I'm not gonna care as much about that, but Void was like the pinnacle of what defines quality for a lot of nations. You know what I mean? And
I mean,
so I think they're like,
is it still Void unlocks? You know, whatever months later.
What is that timeline
Yeah.
in New Nations? Is it still that?
it's like there's an internal nation KE, and then once one alliance reaches a certain BP level, I think it unlocks cross nation.
So if you're even in New Nations, then I mean, if you're any type of player, you're still going through those motions, and then finally, 6 months into the game, this mysterious event that everybody's been talking about opens up, and you fucking bubble and you don't show up, you suck, right? Like so even New Nations, the mantra shouldn't have changed, right? Like the notion shouldn't have changed because again you're waiting and it's this thing that comes up, whereas day one you get fucking Iron Blood, you get fucking your cannon event and your fishing games and whatever other ridiculous thing that Camel throws at, but you don't get Void. You don't get that until you know. So it's crazy. It's fucking nuts.
These younger nations, though, man, they have a whale that kills everyone. Like, you have some Max City whale that's killing the enemy nation, and you just bubble, and you never learn how to fight. That's what people are facing. Like, I'm not saying that's how people should play. No. I'm saying Bryce probably is fighting some nation where there's a whale, and then it's only the whale, and everybody else is bubble tight because they're afraid to lose troops, which is boring as shit.
Which is weird because on the defense, you don't lose
Not
troops unless
not
someone's
necessarily afraid to lose troops, but afraid to piss off the whale.
I mean, but the whale shouldn't be mad.
Either one is no good.
Fight by his side, right?
I mean, personally,
You know?
I love Void, and I sacrificed money and dumped a shit ton of skill books into my first age just so my conversion rate was higher, so I didn't lose troops as much. But what I'm tired of is being online for fucking almost 24 hours looking at bubbles. Like, I just don't do it anymore. It fries my brain. I'm like, hey guys, let me know if a bubble drops, or you know, I'll log in every couple hours, look around. If there's nothing, then I'm out. But it's just ridiculous.
And then you set a
I
trap.
agree.
And you set a trap, and then people just send shitty SOS, and you score points, which is fine, but it's boring as hell.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who you're playing, it's like that, you know. But sure, you might be staring at bubble, you know, and being in a 6-2-1, people are afraid of you, man. You know, let's just call that what it is. People are afraid. You know, if they do open their shield, you know, like you got to have a lot of balls to fight KGK, right? You just have to, you know, and so I feel like you're cursed and you're blessed in the same breath, you know. So it's like so maybe Void's different for you, but I do also believe, depending on the matchup, based on strategy and things, that maybe those shields aren't going to fall because people are loyal to the game and they know how to press 1 day bubble and not a 2 hour bubble, right? They you know, because they don't want to let their nation slap the Lions down, you know. So you're playing similar nations to yours, but if you're setting traps, man, and you're inching and you're doing things to create motion, you know, in the enemy nation or even your own, you know, or getting the other alliances that maybe aren't you, right, to do some things to get some other people to lower their shields, right, whatever that looks like, and you know, that's where you got to go, you know. And I'll tell you, it's definitely something that 425 does. I coordinate with my second and my third alliance. We watch what they do, you know, real time. You know, we follow the lions that attack their cities and we kill them, you know, and whatever that looks like, we set traps, and sometimes it takes hours, but they come. And if you're not there and you're not ready, you know.
There's another variable too that came up the other day. I think I know the nation, but I shouldn't say it because I'm not sure. Somebody's changing their purge rules to be 24 hours. And the idea was, I'm tired of people's shields dropping, so I want everyone to use a 3-day. And I'm 99% sure Big Bird was like, cool, so you're teaching everyone to just shield through KE. That sounds fucking terrible. But, you know, they're not thinking about it like that. They're thinking like, oh,
Yeah.
people drop shields, so I'll just tell them to do 3-day shields. But you're kind of telling everyone not to play the event, too.
Yeah, that's horrible, horrible, horrible reaction. You know, hopefully they change that, whatever nation that was, and you know, there's some tactics out there that you can definitely use, but the long and short of it is if you're not actively playing the game, you should probably only have one fleet. You know, and that's just an easy way to say it. And I say that with respect and tact, but you know, if you're not actively playing the game and you have troops that are high level, you should only have one fleet. And it better be in the fort, man. If it's not and I see it, I might just kill it and stick it in the hospital so you can't play on Sunday. You know? And that's just,
I think
you know,
I think that's the thing that's happening too. You know, if you have no chance to win GC and you don't really care about Elite War and you're bubbling up for the kill event, you have no reason to have more than 2 million troops max and maybe arguably 1 million. I think that's happening in the younger nations too.
I mean, if those were your nation falls on priorities, then, you know, I guess I agree. You know, it would keep everybody down. You know, I'm of the capacity where, you know, I'm you know, I think people should BP decrease depending on your spend level and your age. You know, if you're a non-spender and you're good, you know, you can be fat. You know, but you might over time become too fat. You know, if you can't hide all your troops and all the, and I'm saying without any, you know, I got some 40 million DP C-36s, you know, that are just organically grown, you know, no money, whatever. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like some of those guys need to drop some of that T10 I know they're sitting on, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's all relative, but yeah, if that's your nation priority, you know, I would just hate for your priority to change and then you not have troops, you know. But if you're one of those guys, like the C-38 player that was on here a moment ago, you know, just the bottom line is you shouldn't be scared of C-41. I mean, the worst thing I should be able to get from you is your hostages, brother, and a couple of resources, you know. That's it. It's the only thing I should be able to get from you, you know. And if I can get more than that, then that's on you, you know, unless, you know, I don't know what else to say. And everybody should be playing like that, especially if you're in the top alliance, you know, and I do think that a shield should be required, and everybody can't have all these purge rules and all these rules and then cry about seeing shields, you know. I don't like that. I don't like people crying about seeing shields, but I do dislike the non-fighting part. I think that's horrible. You know, I don't want to name names, but there's some nations that recently played, you know, like, I don't know, Barry's nation, that, you know, they tried to outpoint me in the first 4 phases and then just not do anything in the 5th phase, right? Something like that. I've heard that happen a couple of times recently, you know? That's no fun, man. That's some, what the hell enough? You know, whatever that little thing is, man, no, man, that's not okay. Those things aren't fun, you know, so I don't know what to say or to even like rebuttal those styles of thinking. I would like to think that people are playing a war game to actually do acts of war, you know, which would be fighting on Sundays, on kilowatt Sundays, more specifically the Void War one, you know, but yeah, everybody should be there. Everybody should be available, you know. When I look at that Alliance contribution thing, now I know that's a little wonky for Void because you can pop into the elimination and, you know, hit some stupid C-26, you know, in the corner and be counted as a participant. You know, so those are really easy to kind of fake as long as if you're not scrolling all the way to the bottom, you know. But if you're really, putting in the effort, getting that team attack together, man, there's just really nothing better than that. I don't know what else to say. And when it says successful and the guy that you hit lost, like, a lot, it's a good feeling, I don't know what else to say. It's definitely better than sending all my troops, all 7 million of my troops to Maverick City, in Iron Blood, like I don't know. I don't know how to even compare the two, I just don't. If Void is not the pinnacle event, and I say this with Holbrook, he's not even a Void guy, right? He likes his wasteland and his, that's what they're focusing on. But man, if you don't love killing the next guy's troops, man, it's gotta, man, I don't know. For me, I don't know, maybe I'm just a sick fuck. I think it's the best. I think it's the pinnacle event. I like Elite War as well, just because it's such a, good alliance for alliance event without like the buff items and the purples and the golds and all of these things that make it more of a spend event. Essentially, the only thing you can spend in, an Elite War is gold, So yeah, repair with buffs and skins and timing and all these things. I think it's super strategic. I think that it's a good test. It may not be a great test for the 900s to come down here, but and if you look at those ranks, man, it's comparable. I know the gentleman there, Hawktua, is if he wants to bring it up, but if you just pull him up, man, there's some good newer nations in like the top 75. And there's a couple in there that are really stretching. Like 904, man, 904 is coming down, and they're trying to, push. I like that shit. I like that shit. I think it's cool to see. Cause I remember my grind. I don't know if you were there long enough, Big Bird, with the 621's grind, but I know you've been there for some time.
And you're
The grind is great. I remember top 100, top 90, all the way down. And I appreciate the grind. I do. I'm sure if we talk to 255 and 219 and all those guys, man, they did their thing to get there, and now you got others with that focus, man. It's nice to see the grind. And I got my eyes on a couple of guys, I'm just watching them just run up the ranks. It's cool to see.
Hey, Will.
Sarad, you talking to us or the folks you're sitting with?
Okay.
So
I'd like to see other people. If we can meet that guy, would be great. If I'd like to see other people
the lead, bro.
focusing on the Void stuff, man, I really would. I'd like to see some more traps and strategies being played, even if it's only those 2 or 3 battles. I think everybody that knows the nations that are around you, you can for the most part know when that nation will be, the most active, right? You can kind of tell by people's names, and there's a lot of different ways to just kind of see where, where you think, you can probably get a good window, and, get as many people online and do your thing and create that battle, whatever it looks like. I just really think there's nothing better. And you guys will be able to do that up there in the newer nations or whatever. I'd like to personally start a fucking campaign or whatever you want to call it, like make Void War great again, because that's where I think it's great. But if it's not, cool, man, more power to you. Focus on where you want to. But I really do think that there's really nothing better than taking another man's shit away, in a nice fair match.
LG, I'm with you. When I say 785 doesn't focus on that event, it's not because I don't want to. It's just the younger nations have a different composure where it makes it harder to take that event seriously. Like, I still take Void Tyrant when I can. I still play the hell out of that event. There's, as you said earlier, it gets the blood going. There's no event that's more exciting than Void. It's just that in the younger nations, they just play it different. They just bubble. It's fucking boring. Nobody taught anyone how to play it, and you end up like a billion behind in recruiting, and then they bubble. It's not the same.
It's so gay that fucking that people are like doing that. You know, it just really is. Like, I would much rather just, you know, again with communication and, you know, the tech that we have available and enough people and leaders being, you know, out there, I would much rather, you know, similar to what, you know, us and 621 did, you know, our last frenzy. Let's keep it similar, you know? Let's keep it similar, and whatever that looks like. And I think, you know, again, we still went in, you know, with a little bit of a lead, but it was, nobody was 400 million, a billion recruiting. No one was crazy monster. I think one guy was crazy monsters, but whatever. He was a lone wolf. You know, it was, I think it was 3 billion going into KE, where typically for nations like us, we're more like 5 or 6. I feel like is kind of like an average for us, for whatever reason, just organically with our participation in numbers these days. So, like, it's one of those things where I would much rather see the, you know, the younger nations take that part out of it, even, you know. And I don't want to say make deals, but, you know, hey, let's not go fucking crazy, you know. And if you want to pull a fast one and whatever, fucking recruit 10 billion in the last 5 minutes, you know, and kill the deal and be that guy and bubble up, then we'll make fun of you about it for the next 5 years. You know, it's cool. But, like, at the end of the day, I feel like if you have community relationships with others, you can keep those, I'm sure, and I'm sure Big Bird can confirm this, you know, it saved both nations a couple of ducats, you know, without having to go crazy and keep it, you know, together and all of those things. So it was nice to just take a breath of fresh air and say, I'll see you Saturday night, you know, let's do our thing, whatever that looks like, and we'll go from there. You know, so if people communicate, they could cut out that first 4 phases and just go ham on Sunday, you know, and have fun. You know, and when it comes to Void, you know, I don't expect it to be fighting for 24 hours when it comes to troop loss, right? That's not what we're talking about. But we are talking about you should be able to, you know, have some I don't want to say coordinated, but again, through strategy and trap setting and whatever, you know, you should be able to create some battles, you know, as long as you have a nation that does fight, right? And if, again, we can kind of make Void War great again, I think you'll get more and more of it. But I know down in our nations that we've been fighting since, you know, Mental came and made us fight all these fat older nations, because it's his fault, and I'll, you know, continue to blame him for that. But anywho, since he's been, you know, we've put us in a position where we've had no choice but to, you know, these guys are more healthy than us, right? Just call it what it is. They've been merged more than we have. They've been around longer. They have more people, and, you know, we've had to come up with strategic ways to, you know, get points and not go crazy. And, you know, it's great to, if you can, you know, reach out to, like, Big Bird and Nav and the leadership team over there and say, hey, guys, you're cool with not going nuts? And yeah, we'll see you Saturday night. All right, you know, see you later. I'll move on from there. Does that happen all the time? You know, you wouldn't be able to do that with, like, 255 because they want to make sure that they're, you know, where they're going to win. You know, and probably maybe Boduzzi and those guys wouldn't do that either. You know, maybe they would with us just because they know, you know, I'm not going to screw them over. You know, they would do that with probably a couple of others. So I feel like if everyone's on the same page and there's not some backstabbers out there, you probably save a couple of bucks and have a good time on Sunday. Because that's what it's about, you know? I think so anyway. I'd much rather be in that 40 versus 60 battle if it was on fucking Big Bird City, you know? With respect to Big Bird, right? You know? But I would want that battle, you know? And he wouldn't have lost shit because he would have 60 defenders and we would have got fucked up. you know. But I would want to be in that battle, you know. And I'm sure Big Bird wouldn't mind being in that battle knowing he's got 60 defenders. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this is, and